How much do you think that this potentially could also harm Hong Kong's reputation as a place where you want to do business?
I mean, I think it is already very unsettling for the business community. What the business community wants is stability. It wants certainty in government policies. It wants to be assured that the rule of law remains alive and well, and that rights and freedoms, particularly freedom of expression, freedom of the press, will be protected. If all that is put at risk, then foreign investors and business people in Hong Kong will start asking themselves, if Hong Kong becomes just like any other Chinese city, why bother to be in Hong Kong?
And do you think that the international community should get more involved?
Absolutely,
I noted that you've been quite critical of Cameron as well.
Yes, because Hong Kong isn't just a backwater of China. We are an international city. We have foreign nationals living in Hong Kong. We have considerable foreign investments. And we have signed a whole raft of treaty obligations with other countries, all of which rest on the foundation that we have a system that is very, very different from mainland China.
I totally agree, Anson. It's very hard to argue with any of that. But I think what's interesting for me is, I was saying earlier, I'm not surprised by this because I think what's happening in Hong Kong in terms of the protests is just an extension of what we've seen happening around the world for the last few years, from Arab Spring to, Occupy movement to protests in London. This is really just an extension of disenfranchised people feeling that they need to get a voice. And, you could argue UKIP is actually an extension of that in the UK. But I think it's interesting that there's been this reaction to it happening in Hong Kong. Whereas I'd argue that it's actually a lot more worrying when we see this happen in China, because potentially it's a lot more destabilizing. The consequences, however fond we all are of Hong Kong, and I tend to visit there regularly, I think the consequences of all this when it was going on in China for the last few years, and Jasmine riots and whatever were being largely ignored by powers outside China, that potentially had a far greater impact. It was far more dangerous to the global economy and global geopolitics.
I don't disagree with that, but unfortunately today you see that money talks. Yeah. You see Britain caving in, all for trade and investment with China.
Absolutely.
But given what has happened in Hong Kong, particularly in the recent few days, I think Britain and the rest of the world should sit up and take notice about what is happening in Hong Kong. If China walks away from its commitments to Hong Kong under the joint declaration, what does this say about China's commitment to other treaty obligations to the rest of the world?